All right. So right now we're going to begin the Q&A session. But before we do, I would like to first remind you of an event that's going to come up next weekend. It's Mac MEC's biggest event of the year, which is QQC, or Qur'an Quran competition. It'll be held in Isna on Saturday, March 12th. There are 13 universities that are confirmed to compete, and there will be $1,000 cash prize for the winning MSA. That's a lot of zeros. And there will be also a free Umrah ticket for the best reciter, mashallah. And there will be a guest lecture by Sheikh Riyad Urzazi. And also there will be a bazaar with over 15 vendors. So this is a huge event. So check it out at macmec.com/QQC. So for the Q&A, if people want to speak up, which I think Brother Hamza could first, please raise your hand, and he'll probably choose one of you. And also, if you want to write one of your questions down, please pass the cue card to the front. I believe there is a brother at the back. Bilal Sheikh? Yeah, he'll collect the cue cards from the back and he'll pass it on. Okay. Ooh. Okay, good. I'm going to take a written question first. Is this needed? Is this necessary? I'm going to take a written question first. It's actually printed out, which is quite amazing. I don't know how they did it, because they even commented on my presentation as well. It says, "Hi, I wanted to say that was an interesting presentation. Thank you for that. I had one question for you. Let's say there was a man called Omar. He was described by his friends and family as the most honest, sincere, and friendly people around. He never murdered, raped, stole, or was mischievous in any way. He was seen regularly volunteering, blah, blah, blah. He was a good guy. Overall, he had a good contribution to society, but he made one more mistake, and he left the religion of Islam. And since he lives in that country that implements Sharia law, he has been sentenced to execution. My question is, how does this show Islam as a religion of peace and non-violence?" Actually, Islam is not a religion of peace and non-violence. That's a fact. Islam is a comprehensive worldview. Islam is a religion that's comprehensive. It deals with war, it deals with peace, it deals with justice, it deals with spirituality, it deals with accountability, it deals with models of politics, it deals with values, it deals with spirituality. We don't ever render Islam to just two concepts like violence, non-violence, and peace. Because actually not very true at all. Because we know the Prophet ﷺ was a statesman. He was there to protect people. This is why we believe that Islam is a mercy for everybody. Because we don't follow the principle of turn the other cheek. Because you won't have no cheeks left. How do you protect a society? No, honestly, this is a true, we're not idealists. Idealism doesn't exist. That's why it's called idealism, isn't it? We're realists from that perspective, because the Quran came down for human beings, not for angels. This is why we consider it as a huge love and mercy from God, because it came to deal with realities of war. Because if you study anthropology, war is a human phenomenon. People were fighting before religion, during religion, after religion. They fight all the time. Human beings do this. Now what the Quran did as a mercy from Allah, as a mercy from God, is to give you principles and values to deal with war. And that's the beauty of it. Now when we go to other traditions, for example, the Christian tradition, for example, if we go to Deuteronomy, what does it say about war? It says kill everybody. That's an interpretation. If we study systematic theology, maybe that's not true. If we follow a German school of theology, we'll come to the conclusion that's abrogated. Yeah? It's not part of the tradition anymore. But you may have like very right-wing, Republican, people who think the gospel truth is actually the gospel truth. And then they look at Deuteronomy and it says, if they don't worship what you worship, kill everyone, women and children. See, this is why we believe the Quran is a mercy from Allah and the Prophet ﷺ is a mercy, because when we engage in war, what we actually do, as you heard in the presentation by Sheikh Ala today, the 10 principles of war, you can remember them for a free gift. Okay, there wasn't that many of you anyway, but for example, you can't kill children, can't kill an old man, fight those only that fight you. If they call to peace, you call to peace. If they incline to peace, you incline to peace. You can't chop down trees, burn houses, you can't fight in the night. Why? When they asked the Prophet ﷺ, he said, because so you can't disturb the mother with her suckling baby, you know, breastfeeding her baby. Do you see? Beautiful principles that outdated the Geneva Convention. You know, theories of war in the Western tradition. And war's a human right anyway, especially when it comes to defense. In the Article 51 of the UN Charter, it says there is an inherent right of every individual and collective to defend themselves against armed attack. So we believe that, you know, it's an outdated thing that Muslims use and they shouldn't use it, oh, Islam is peace. That's not true. Let's get over that narrative, right? Islam is comprehensive worldview, and it deals with human beings, and it deals with humanity, and it deals with life. And sometimes life, you need justice. You have to deal with crime and punishment. You have to deal with spirituality. You have to deal with relation with God. Yeah, there's so many things. That's why Islam is seen as a comprehensive worldview rather than a religion. That's why in Islam it defines itself as the deen. A deen in Arabic actually means worldview, way of life, etc., etc. So to articulate the particular question about apostasy in Islam, the answer is there is various opinions on what happens to someone who leaves the tradition of Islam. One of the opinions is that they are eligible for capital punishment, okay? But it's not based on justice, it's based upon lots of criteria. One of the criteria are that if they have a question, you should still answer it. You see? And this for us shows to us that the punishment is a deterrent rather than to be a full application. It's a deterrent to show people that truth is not a joke. Do you see? In a capitalist environment, you can get killed for money. We invade countries for money, right? Generally, that's what happens in the West. So we value capital more than aspects of truth. So there is a collective punishment with regards to capital. But in Islam, there's an individual punishment based on the value of truth. We don't presume skepticism to be true. We assume that there is a particular truth. And if you're going to deny it after accepting it, there needs to be good reasons. You see, you can't just willy-nilly, because that means you devalue your own very existence. That's one argument. But it's based on lots of criteria. There's about 20 criteria. For example, if someone has a question, you should always answer. The other view is if they're political enemies. So not they just leave the religion of Islam, but they now fight the Muslims. So it's seen as treason. And treason is also seen in Western countries as punishable by death. For example, many of the Republicans in America wanted the WikiLeaks founder to be tried under treason so he could get killed. Yeah? So that's another view. Another scholarly view is that there is no standard punishment for this at all. Okay? So there are various views and they have their own justification. So that's it. I hope that answers the question. One from the floor. Yes, sir.
A lot of the, I'm a Muslim myself, but I can imagine that there might be quite a few non-Muslims in the audience. And one of the questions that they may have is that a lot of the proof that you use from the character of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was based on Islamic tradition to begin with.
Yes.
So I mean, it's kind of like using like your own proof to prove your proof.
Okay, that's good.
Does that make sense? Yeah,
that makes lots of sense. See, what we have to understand is that the narrators of narrating the character of the Prophet ﷺ, they weren't shy of mentioning things that were counter to current status quo. So they would mention things that we would even say, wow, did that really happen? They would mention things that would be against what people thought were moral norms at the time. Do you see? So this indicates that they weren't shy of talking about the true reality of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. It wasn't just a rosy picture according to current norms of morality. Because they would even mention things that were distasteful to the people at the time. Do you see? So that argument doesn't really have any strength. Secondly, in our tradition, they're not just statements, they're not just folklore or myths. We believe in the science of history, and we have a very unique view in history. For instance, we have the isnad and matan system. The matan is essentially means the text of the particular statement. So we have matan criticism. We actually criticize the text itself. There's a concept in hadith studies called anomalous textual reading. For example, if the linguistic style of the particular text is not in line with what we know the Prophet would say, we would reject it. This is why there's difference of opinion amongst the ulama, amongst the scholars of Islam, that the text for the hadith, for the prophetic tradition of doing the prayer of, what's the prayer that you just have to do, you got to do it for like 40 minutes? Salatul Tasbih. Has anyone heard of this?
Yes.
There's two different opinions amongst the scholars. The chain of narration is sound, so it's a valid narration, but some reject it based upon the text itself because it's not the style of the Prophet to speak like this. Do you see? So it's mutton criticism. So we have a very amazing science on the text itself. Secondly, we have the chain of narration. Did it start with the Prophet ﷺ and did it end with someone that we know to be trustworthy? And is everyone in the chain of narration proven to be trustworthy? And when we mean proven to be trustworthy, it's not that did they ever lie, but were they good people? Were they pious? Were they known to be pious? Do we have any reason to go against the trustworthy authority? Also, we don't just have single chains, but we have multiple chains, which means the statement of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was filtered through his companions, and through his companions, it was filtered to different people and students at different places and times. So it's like a crisscross of multiple narrations at different times and places. To deny a statement at the end of the chain would be tantamount of saying that they had a time machine that conspired together at different times and places to say, guess what? This is what the Prophet said, okay? Yeah? So we have a multiple narration. So even Western historians, when they look at our tradition of historicity, they're scared. You know why they're scared? Because if you apply those harsh criteria for history and textual integrity, and we apply it to the Bible, or we apply it to Western history, then we can't accept either. We can't even believe that Hitler existed. Do you see? So it's a very strong science of history. And also we have external evidence too. For example, the patriarch Ishiobath in AD 647, 649, he mentioned the Arabs. They mentioned the Prophet ﷺ in terms of their tolerance, etc. So we do have external reports as well. But the argument is, in absence of this tradition, then what evidence do you have? And you can't argue from ignorance, can you? So you take what you have, and you say, fine, what good reasons do they have to make the stories up? Well, they don't have any, because they would mention things that was counter the current status quo at the time. Do you see? So we still got good reasons that tradition is quite a sound tradition. Good. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Many non-Muslims, Islam critics comment that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a womanizer, having as many as 12 wives, one of them being very young. Can you shed light on this? Yeah, he had many wives. Let's get over it. Yeah? Many of you would like to have many wives as well. So let's get over that. See, what we have to understand is, first and foremost, from a moral perspective, what is wrong with having more than one wife? I want someone to challenge me here. Speak. Your hand doesn't speak. Say something.
It's not possible to.
You can't possibly treat them all exactly the same.
Okay, well, have you had 12 wives before?
No, it's just like, I don't see how.
That's fine, but that's like you're arguing from ignorance. That's a logical fallacy. That's like argumentum ad ignoration. You argue from no knowledge. You can't do that, right? Sir?
The other thing is that it's against the main principle of family.
It's against the main principle of family?
Yeah, family is, the meaning of the family means that there's a father and mother that take care of the children, and all together forms a kind of a constitution based on love, understanding, and you cannot share your love with too many others.
Why do you say that though? Why is that a hidden premise in your argument, that you can't share love with more than one person? That is actually inaccurate.
Even in
you see,
Prophet's time, there was time that lots of the some wives of the Prophet came together and sent Fatima to the Prophet and asked him why you pay more attention to Aisha than the others.
Yeah.
And he answered that because
That was
this is
because
the
of internal
heart.
jealousy.
My heart
Yeah.
is given me by the God, and the control of my heart is by the God.
See, there's a difference here. See, you could love 12 people easily, yeah? Like, I love everyone in this room because they're Muslim. We're taught to love Muslims. I don't even know them. And my love would manifest itself probably better than some of you treat your own wives, man. Yeah? So the point I'm trying to say, the issue I'm trying to say here is, see, why do we restrict the human heart that way? It's such a restriction to such a powerful force like love. Yeah, but the point I'm trying to say, but the point I'm trying to say,
yes, it's good if I could love all the people in the world, but I can't.
No, it's not idealistic though, because it happened. Because even throughout 14 centuries, many men, as you know in the Islamic tradition, you can marry more than one wife. It's not recommended because you have to be just, okay? Because if you're unjust to your wives, you're like hanging droopy on the day of judgment. It's like a seen as a big punishment, yeah. Now, with regards to your inclination of love, obviously you're gonna love one person more than the other, but it doesn't mean you don't love everyone. That's the issue. The other point is I don't see how it goes against the constitution of family. You're creating more families. Do you see? And what we have to understand as well is this: the reason I'm having this discussion is because this discussion shows how fundamentally, philosophically incoherent we are. Because we have to even argue small points. So we're saying who draws the line and where. Ontologically, from a foundational perspective, the one who draws the line is God himself. So if God has permitted someone to marry more than once, then it's a divine value and it makes it good, it makes it moral by definition. Secondly, even the Christian prophets had met more than one wife, for example. Abraham had more than one wife, yeah? Sorry?
David of Solomon.
Yeah, it was Solomon, yeah. So the point is why do we find it morally repugnant? On what basis? Whereas the basis from a humanist or atheist moral perspective is based on social consensus anyway. So if it's social consensus, in 20 years' time, if they say polygamy is fine, then you just be a product of social consensus. So this way, morality from that perspective is rendered ephemeral, it's empty, it has no meaning. You're just a product of social biological circumstances. But we say no, our morality is actually stronger foundationally because it's objective, because it comes from the divine. Because the divine is the only concept that transcends human subjectivity. Now, I'll give you an example. There's an organization called NAMBLA, the North American Boys Men Lover Association. And they're using human rights legislation to try and legalize 60-year-old men to make love to 4-year-old boys. That may happen in 50 years, and it may happen to the point where it's legislated that we can't discriminate against such people because it's their genetic nature. That may happen. We have a historical precedence for that already. Do you see? So social pressure changes, and therefore morals as a result change. So to have that as a basis for our reference and yardstick, judging other traditions, is a very weak basis, philosophically, extremely weak. If I was having that perspective, I'll be a relativist and I'll just shut up, basically. Not to say that you should do that, but that's what I would do. This is why the famous atheist ethicist J.L. Mackie, in his book Ethics, he said, really, there is no objective morals. Just let's just be quiet about morality. Yeah? We don't have any reference point. It's not objective. Has no strong ontological foundation. So this is why I'm saying who has the right to draw the line and where, and we say it's God himself. Also, we see the product of the marriages. They were also politically motivated as well, some of them, one can argue. It brought tribes together. It brought different peoples together. And you would always see that every single one of the wives of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was happy with the situation. They loved the Prophet so much. Do you see? He was the best to his wives. You know, there are some amazing dynamic human instances where sometimes the wives would have a food fight. I think it was, is it Safa? Or, subhanAllah. One of the wives would throw some halwa or something at someone's face, and the Prophet would reply, won't you return the favor? And they will fight like that, right? Very human. And this was the reality of the Prophet ﷺ. He used to race with his wives. Race. And then he used to win when he used to get a bit more chubby, right? So, you know, there was very human instances. And you have to also understand that the society at the time facilitate those type of marriages because the social construct